My name is Elena, and I am about to share with you the most extraordinary story of family betrayal, financial manipulation, and the incredible twist of fate that turned my greatest heartbreak into my most powerful moment of justice. My mother stole my entire wedding fund to pay off her boyfriend's gambling debts, leaving me devastated and financially ruined just weeks before my ceremony. But what she did not know was that I owned a collection agency that had been pursuing Marcus for those very debts. And when I discovered the truth, I had the power to make decisions that would change all of our lives forever. This is the story of how betrayal became my greatest teacher, how financial devastation became my motivation for building an empire, and how the woman who tried to destroy my dreams ended up facing consequences she never could have imagined. But to understand how this incredible situation unfolded, I need to take you back to where it all began, in the small financial district office where I learned that money represents far more than numbers on a page. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and I am 31 years old. Today, I serve as the founder and chief executive of Premier Recovery Solutions, a debt collection agency that manages over $40 million in outstanding receivables for clients across the northeastern United States. Our company employs 63 people and has earned recognition as one of the most ethical and effective collection agencies in the industry, known for our innovative approaches to debt resolution and our commitment to treating all parties with dignity and respect. The journey to this position began in circumstances that seemed unlikely to produce entrepreneurial success. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Hartford, Connecticut, where my father, Miguel Rodriguez, worked as a maintenance supervisor at a local manufacturing plant. My mother, Carmen, held various part-time positions throughout my childhood, from retail sales to administrative support, never quite finding stable long-term employment that matched her capabilities and ambitions. Our family's financial situation was perpetually unstable, not because of insufficient income, but because of my mother's relationship with money that I would not fully understand until much later. Carmen possessed an almost magical ability to make money disappear through poor decisions, impulse purchases, and a consistent pattern of prioritizing immediate gratification over long-term financial security. My father worked overtime regularly to compensate for what he diplomatically referred to as my mother's spending challenges, but his additional efforts were never sufficient to create the stability that our household desperately needed. The constant tension between my parents about financial matters created an environment where money became associated with conflict, stress, and broken promises. Despite these challenges, my parents emphasized the importance of education as the pathway to a better future. They understood that their own limited opportunities were partially the result of not having completed their formal education, and they were determined that I would have access to possibilities that had been unavailable to them. I excelled academically throughout elementary and high school, maintaining honor roll status while also working part-time jobs to contribute to household expenses and save money for college. These early work experiences in retail and food service taught me valuable lessons about customer service, problem solving, and the importance of reliability that would prove essential in my future career. The local community college offered an affordable pathway to higher education, and I enrolled in their business administration program with a concentration in finance. The coursework fascinated me, particularly the classes that explored how financial systems operated and how businesses manage cash flow, credit, and collection processes. Professor Margaret Chen taught Introduction to Financial Management with a focus on practical applications that students could immediately implement in their personal and professional lives. Her class attracted students from diverse backgrounds who shared common goals of building financial literacy and developing career opportunities in business and finance. Professor Chen encouraged students to develop internship opportunities with local businesses that could provide hands-on experience with financial management systems and processes. My internship placement was with Meridian Financial Services, a small company that provided bookkeeping and collection services to local medical practices and small businesses. The internship introduced me to the debt collection industry, which I had previously viewed with the same negative perception that most consumers hold toward collection agencies. However, working directly with the process revealed the complexity and importance of collection services in maintaining the financial health of businesses that provided essential services to their communities. Dr. Sarah Williams owned a family practice that struggled with outstanding patient balances that threatened her ability to maintain operations and continue serving low-income patients who depended on her care. The collection agency helped her recover funds that were legitimately owed while also working with patients to establish payment plans that were manageable within their financial constraints. This experience taught me that ethical debt collection serves an important function in the economy by helping businesses recover funds that enable them to continue providing valuable services, while also helping consumers resolve financial obligations in ways that minimize long-term damage to their credit and financial stability. My supervisor at Meridian Financial Services was Janet Morrison, a woman in her 50s who had built a successful career in financial services through a combination of technical expertise, ethical business practices, and genuine concern for both clients and consumers. Janet became an informal mentor who helped me understand the collection industry while also teaching me about business development, client relationship management, and strategic planning. Elena, the collection industry has a terrible reputation because too many companies prioritize short-term profits over long-term relationships, Janet explained during one of our training sessions. But there is enormous opportunity for someone who can build a collection agency that focuses on ethical practices, innovative solutions, and genuine service to both clients and consumers. Her perspective opened my eyes to possibilities within the industry that I had not previously considered. Most collection agencies operated with adversarial approaches that created negative outcomes for everyone involved. But there was clearly demand for services that could achieve better results through more sophisticated and ethical methodologies. During my final semester of college, Janet offered me a full-time position with Meridian Financial Services, which would allow me to continue learning about the industry while also providing stable income and opportunities for professional advancement. The offer represented security and growth potential that exceeded what most recent graduates could expect in the current economic environment. However, I had also been accepted into a graduate program in business administration that would provide advanced education in finance, operations management, and entrepreneurship. The decision between immediate employment and continued education represented a choice between short-term financial security and long-term career potential. My parents' perspectives on this decision reflected their different approaches to risk and opportunity. My father encouraged me to accept the job offer, viewing stable employment as the most prudent choice given our family's financial history and the uncertain prospects associated with additional education. My mother, surprisingly, encouraged me to pursue the graduate program, arguing that advanced education would open doors to opportunities that would not be available with only undergraduate credentials. Her support for the more ambitious path was unexpected given her usual preference for immediate rather than delayed gratification. The conversation that ultimately influenced my decision occurred during a dinner with Janet Morrison, who had become both a professional mentor and personal friend. She explained that the collection industry was experiencing significant changes due to technological advances, regulatory developments, and evolving consumer expectations that created opportunities for innovative approaches. Elena, I believe you have the combination of technical skills, ethical foundation, and strategic thinking that could enable you to build something extraordinary in this industry, Janet told me. Whether you do that here at Meridian, or eventually start your own company, the advanced education will give you capabilities that will be essential for long-term success. Her insight helped me understand that the choice was not simply between employment and education, but between preparing for conventional success versus developing the capabilities necessary for entrepreneurial achievement. The graduate program would provide knowledge and credentials that could support much more ambitious goals than simply working for an existing company. I decided to pursue the graduate program while also maintaining a part-time consulting relationship with Meridian Financial Services that would allow me to continue gaining practical experience while completing my advanced education. This arrangement provided both the learning opportunities I needed and sufficient income to support myself without accumulating excessive student debt. The graduate program at the University of Connecticut focused on entrepreneurship and small business development, with particular emphasis on service industries and technology applications. The coursework provided advanced understanding of business planning, financial modeling, marketing strategy, and operations management that would prove essential for building a successful company. Professor David Kim taught advanced entrepreneurship with a focus on identifying market opportunities, and developing innovative business models that could address underserved customer needs. His class attracted students who shared common interests in building companies that could create value for customers, while also generating sustainable profits for investors and stakeholders. The final project for Professor Kim's class required students to develop comprehensive business plans for ventures that addressed real market opportunities through innovative approaches. My project focused on creating a collection agency that would differentiate itself through ethical practices, technological innovation, and superior outcomes for both clients and consumers. The research required for this project helped me understand the specific problems that existing collection agencies failed to address effectively. Most companies in the industry competed primarily on price, which led to cost-cutting measures that reduced service quality and created negative outcomes for all stakeholders involved in the collection process. There was clearly demand for a collection agency that could achieve better recovery rates, while also maintaining positive relationships with consumers and providing superior service to client companies. The business model I developed outlined how technology, training, and ethical practices could create competitive advantages that would support premium pricing and sustainable growth. Working on this business plan while maintaining my consulting relationship with Meridian Financial Services created powerful synergy between theoretical learning and practical application. The academic framework helped me understand industry dynamics and strategic opportunities, while the hands-on experience provided insights into operational challenges and customer needs that textbooks could never address. My personal life during this period was focused primarily on education and career development, but I had also been in a committed relationship with Michael Chen, whom I had met during my undergraduate studies. Michael worked as a software engineer for a local technology company and shared my interests in entrepreneurship and building a life based on shared values and mutual support. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Our relationship had progressed to the point where we were planning to marry after I completed my graduate program. We had begun saving money for a wedding that would celebrate our commitment, while also remaining within reasonable financial constraints that would not compromise our ability to build a secure future together. The wedding planning process became an opportunity to practice the financial management skills I was learning through my academic and professional experiences. We established a budget, researched vendors, and made decisions based on value rather than simply choosing the least expensive or most luxurious options available. My mother's involvement in the wedding planning created some tension, as her suggestions consistently exceeded our budget and reflected her preference for appearances over financial prudence. However, Michael and I remained committed to our financial goals while also trying to accommodate family expectations and desires for a memorable celebration. The most significant challenge emerged when my mother began pressuring us to increase the wedding budget to include upgrades that she claimed were essential for properly celebrating such an important milestone. Her arguments focused on the importance of family pride and the need to create an event that would be worthy of the love and commitment we shared. "Elena, you only get married once, and this should be the most beautiful day of your life," my mother argued during one of our planning discussions. "You have worked so hard to build a successful career, and your wedding should reflect the achievement and status you have earned." Her perspective reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of our priorities and values. Michael and I were focused on building a strong foundation for our marriage and future family, which required making prudent financial decisions rather than spending money we had not yet earned on a single day of celebration. The tension between my mother's expectations and our financial goals created stress that extended beyond wedding planning into broader questions about family relationships and the role that money played in defining success and happiness. These conversations would prove to be preparation for much more significant conflicts that lay ahead. Despite these challenges, I remained focused on completing my education and building the foundation for entrepreneurial success. The combination of advanced academic training, practical industry experience, and a clear vision for innovation within the collection industry created conditions for pursuing opportunities that exceeded what most people considered possible. The business plan I had developed for Professor Kim's class had evolved into a comprehensive strategy for building a collection agency that could achieve extraordinary results while maintaining the highest ethical standards. The research had identified specific market opportunities, competitive advantages, and operational approaches that could support rapid growth and sustainable profitability. More importantly, The planning process had revealed that success in the collection industry required more than simply understanding financial and operational considerations. Building a company that could achieve superior results would require deep understanding of human psychology, communication strategies, and relationship management that could turn adversarial situations into collaborative problem-solving opportunities. The skills and knowledge I was developing through my academic and professional experiences were preparing me for opportunities that I could not yet fully envision. Every project, every satisfied client, and every lesson learned was contributing to a foundation that would soon support achievements far beyond what anyone in my family had previously imagined possible. Looking back, those years of preparation were not simply about acquiring credentials or accumulating experience. They were about developing the capabilities, relationships, and strategic thinking that would enable me to recognize and pursue the extraordinary opportunity that was approaching, hidden within circumstances that would initially appear to be devastating personal betrayal. The young woman who was planning her wedding while building a career had no idea that her mother's financial irresponsibility would soon create the catalyst for building a business empire that would transform not only her own life, but the lives of thousands of clients and consumers who would benefit from innovative approaches to debt resolution and financial recovery. The completion of my graduate program marked a transformative period in both my professional aspirations and personal relationships. The comprehensive business plan I had developed for building an ethical collection agency had evolved from an academic exercise into a viable roadmap for entrepreneurial success. The research had identified substantial market opportunities for a company that could achieve superior recovery rates while maintaining positive relationships with all stakeholders involved in the debt resolution process. Janet Morrison had been following my academic progress with keen interest and genuine pride in my development. As I approached graduation, she presented an opportunity that would provide the foundation for pursuing my entrepreneurial ambitions, while also offering immediate financial stability and advanced industry experience. "Elena, I have been thinking about succession planning for Meridian Financial Services," Janet explained during one of our regular mentoring sessions. "I am approaching retirement, and I believe you have the vision and capabilities to take this company to the next level. I would like to offer you a partnership arrangement that could eventually lead to full ownership of the business." Her proposal represented an extraordinary opportunity to transition from employee to business owner while building upon an established client base and proven operational systems. Meridian Financial Services had earned an excellent reputation within the local business community, and the partnership arrangement would provide access to resources and relationships that would be difficult to develop independently. However, the partnership opportunity also required careful consideration of whether expanding an existing business aligned with my vision of building something entirely new that could implement innovative approaches and technological solutions. The choice between acquiring an established company and building a new venture represented different paths toward achieving my entrepreneurial goals. Michael and I spent countless hours discussing the implications of this decision for both my career aspirations and our personal plans. The partnership with Janet would provide immediate income and reduced risk, but it might also limit my ability to implement the innovative approaches that I believed could revolutionize the collection industry. "Elena, I support whatever decision you believe is best for your long-term goals," Michael told me during one of these conversations. "But I think you should consider whether this opportunity allows you to build the kind of company you have been envisioning, or whether it might constrain your ability to implement your ideas fully." His perspective helped me understand that the choice was not simply between security and risk, but between adapting my vision to fit existing constraints versus creating conditions where my vision could be implemented without compromise. The partnership with Janet was appealing, but it might prevent me from building the technology-driven, innovation-focused company that I believed could achieve extraordinary results. After extensive consideration and consultation with mentors, professors, and industry contacts, I decided to pursue my original vision of building a new company from the ground up. This decision would require securing initial funding, developing client relationships, and building operational systems independently, but it would also provide complete freedom to implement innovative approaches without the constraints imposed by existing business models and client expectations. Janet was gracious and supportive of my decision, understanding that entrepreneurial success often requires the courage to pursue ambitious visions even when more conservative alternatives are available. She offered to serve as an advisor and referral source as I built my new company, providing invaluable guidance and industry credibility during the challenging startup phase. The decision to build premier recovery solutions from scratch required developing a comprehensive implementation plan that addressed funding requirements, operational development, technology systems, and client acquisition strategies. The business plan that had begun as an academic project needed to be refined and expanded to support actual business operations and investor presentations. The funding requirements for starting a collection agency were substantial due to regulatory compliance costs, technology infrastructure needs, and the working capital necessary to support operations during the initial period when revenue would be limited. Traditional bank loans were difficult to obtain for a startup in an industry with negative public perception, which meant exploring alternative funding sources and creative financing arrangements. My savings from part-time work and consulting had accumulated to approximately $15,000, which was sufficient for basic startup costs but inadequate for the comprehensive technology platform and staffing that would be necessary to implement my vision effectively. Additional funding would be required from investors who understood the industry opportunity and believed in my ability to execute the business plan successfully. Professor Kim had maintained relationships with angel investors and venture capital firms that specialized in service industry startups, and he agreed to provide introductions to potential investors who might be interested in the collection agency opportunity. These presentations would require demonstrating both the market opportunity and my capabilities as an entrepreneur who could execute the business plan effectively. The investor presentation process proved to be an invaluable learning experience that forced me to refine my business model and develop sophisticated understanding of financial projections, competitive analysis, and risk management strategies. Each presentation provided feedback that helped me strengthen the business plan and communicate the opportunity more effectively. Thomas Richardson was a successful entrepreneur who had built and sold several service companies and was now investing in early-stage businesses with innovative approaches to established industries. His background included experience with financial services companies, and he understood both the challenges and opportunities within the collection industry. Elena, I am impressed by your analysis of the market opportunity and your vision for differentiating premier recovery solutions through ethical practices and technological innovation. Thomas told me after reviewing the business plan and attending my presentation. The collection industry desperately needs companies that can achieve better results while treating consumers with dignity and respect. His investment of $75,000 provided the funding necessary to begin operations, while also bringing valuable experience and industry connections that would accelerate business development. Thomas agreed to serve on the advisory board and provide ongoing guidance as the company grew and evolved. The early months of building premier recovery solutions required intense focus on developing operational systems, recruiting qualified staff, and establishing relationships with potential clients who would provide the case volume necessary to demonstrate our capabilities and achieve sustainable profitability. The technology platform represented a critical competitive advantage that would enable more efficient operations and better outcomes for both clients and consumers. Traditional collection agencies relied primarily on manual processes and adversarial communication strategies that created negative experiences and limited recovery rates. I invested significant time and resources in developing proprietary software that could automate routine tasks, analyze consumer behavior patterns, and recommend personalized communication strategies that would be more effective than generic collection approaches. The system was designed to track all interactions and outcomes, providing data that could be used to continuously improve strategies and demonstrate superior results to potential clients. The staffing strategy focused on recruiting individuals who shared my commitment to ethical practices and professional excellence, rather than hiring experienced collectors who might have developed adversarial habits at other agencies. I chose to recruit candidates with strong communication skills and customer service backgrounds, who could be trained in collection techniques that aligned with our company values. Rebecca Thompson was a former customer service manager at a regional bank who understood both the importance of regulatory compliance and the value of maintaining positive customer relationships. Her experience with financial services and her natural empathy made her an ideal candidate for training in ethical collection practices. I have always believed that financial difficulties are temporary challenges that most people want to resolve, Rebecca explained during her interview. The approach should be helping consumers find solutions, rather than simply pressuring them to pay immediately regardless of their circumstances. Her perspective aligned perfectly with our company philosophy, and she became our first full-time collections specialist. Rebecca's success in achieving high recovery rates while maintaining positive consumer relationships validated our approach and provided a model for training additional staff members. The client acquisition process required demonstrating our capabilities to potential clients who had typically worked with established agencies that competed primarily on price rather than results or service quality. Our value proposition focused on achieving better recovery rates through superior strategies while also providing enhanced customer service that would protect client relationships with their customers. Dr. Patricia Williams owned a family medical practice that struggled with outstanding patient balances that affected cash flow and limited her ability to provide services to low-income patients who needed care but lacked insurance coverage. Traditional collection agencies had achieved poor results while also creating negative experiences that damaged her relationships with patients who might need future medical services. Elena, I am willing to try your approach because the current system is not working for anyone, Dr. Williams told me during our initial consultation. My patients are good people who want to pay their bills, but they need help finding solutions that work within their financial constraints. If you can achieve better results while treating my patients with respect, that would benefit everyone involved. Her willingness to work with a new company provided the opportunity to demonstrate our capabilities while also refining our processes based on real-world experience. The medical industry presented unique challenges due to the sensitive nature of healthcare services and the complex insurance and billing systems that often confused patients and created disputes. The results exceeded our expectations and validated the business model we had developed. Within 3 months, we had achieved a recovery rate that was 30% higher than the previous collection agency, while also receiving positive feedback from patients who appreciated our professional and respectful communication approach. Dr. Williams became an enthusiastic advocate for our services, providing referrals to other medical practices and serving as a reference for potential clients who wanted to understand the benefits of our approach. Her endorsement was particularly valuable because she was well respected within the medical community and known for her commitment to patient care and ethical business practices. The success with medical practices led to opportunities with other service industries that shared similar challenges, with outstanding receivables and concerns about maintaining customer relationships. Small businesses consistently struggled with cash flow problems created by unpaid invoices, but they also feared that aggressive collection activities might damage relationships with customers they hoped to serve again in the future. Meanwhile, my personal life was progressing toward the wedding that Michael and I had been planning throughout the business development process. The success of Premier Recovery Solutions had provided financial stability that supported our goals of building a life together based on shared values and mutual support. The wedding planning had become more complex as my mother's involvement increased and her suggestions consistently exceeded our established budget. Carmen had strong opinions about every aspect of the celebration, from the venue and catering to the decorations and entertainment. And her preferences invariably involved additional expenses that would strain our financial resources. Elena, you have worked so hard to build a successful business, and your wedding should reflect the achievement and status you have earned, my mother argued during one of our planning meetings. People will judge our family based on this celebration, and we need to make sure it creates the right impression. Her focus on appearances and status reflected values that differed significantly from the practical approach that Michael and I preferred. We were committed to creating a beautiful and meaningful celebration, while also maintaining financial discipline that would support our long-term goals of building a secure future together. The tension between my mother's expectations and our financial boundaries created ongoing stress that began to affect other aspects of our relationship. Carmen had always struggled with money management, but the wedding planning revealed the extent to which her financial decisions were driven by emotion and image rather than practical considerations. My father attempted to mediate between my mother's desires and our budget constraints, but his efforts were complicated by his own limited understanding of our financial situation and his desire to avoid conflict that might escalate into more serious family problems. Elena, perhaps you could consider some compromises that would satisfy your mother without completely abandoning your budget, my father suggested during a private conversation. She is very excited about this wedding, and it would mean a lot to her if you could accommodate some of her suggestions. His diplomatic approach was well-intentioned, but it failed to address the fundamental issue that my mother's suggestions would require spending money we had allocated for other priorities, including the continued growth of Premier Recovery Solutions and our plans for purchasing a home after the wedding. The financial pressure created by my mother's expectations was particularly challenging because the business was still in its early stages and required continued investment in technology, staffing, and marketing to achieve sustainable growth. Every dollar spent on wedding upgrades was money that could not be invested in building the foundation for long-term success. Michael remained supportive of maintaining our original budget despite the family pressure, understanding that financial discipline was essential for achieving our goals of building wealth and security over time. His background in technology had taught him the importance of strategic resource allocation and the dangers of allowing short-term desires to compromise long-term objectives. The success of Premier Recovery Solutions was attracting attention from potential clients and industry observers who were interested in our innovative approaches to debt collection. The combination of ethical practices, technological innovation, and superior results was creating a reputation that differentiated us from competitors and supported premium pricing for our services. The growth trajectory was exceeding our initial projections, and the business was generating sufficient cash flow to support expansion into new markets and service offerings. The success validated my decision to pursue entrepreneurship despite the risks and uncertainties associated with building a new company in a challenging industry. However, the rapid growth also created new challenges related to scaling operations, maintaining service quality, and managing the cash flow fluctuations that were inherent in the collection industry. Clients typically paid fees based on successful collections, which meant that revenue was tied directly to recovery results and could vary significantly from month to month. The variability in cash flow required careful financial management and sufficient working capital to support operations during periods when collections were lower than expected. The business was profitable and growing, but it had not yet reached the scale necessary to provide complete financial security and predictable income. The wedding fund that Michael and I had been accumulating represented a significant portion of our liquid assets, and we had been careful to keep these funds separate from business operations to ensure that our personal celebration would not be affected by business fluctuations. The account contained approximately $28,000 that would cover all wedding expenses, while also providing a small reserve for unexpected costs. My mother's increasing pressure to upgrade various aspects of the wedding celebration was creating tension that extended beyond simple disagreements about spending priorities. Carmen seemed to view our financial caution as a reflection of our lack of appreciation for family traditions and our failure to recognize the importance of celebrating major life milestones appropriately. The underlying tension reflected fundamental differences in our approaches to money management and our understanding of the relationship between financial decisions and long-term security. My education and business experience had taught me to prioritize sustainable financial practices, while my mother's perspective was shaped by different experiences and values that emphasized immediate satisfaction over long-term planning. The conflict was approaching a resolution point where decisions would need to be made about final wedding arrangements, vendor contracts, and financial commitments that could not be easily modified once finalized. The choices we made during this period would determine whether the wedding celebration aligned with our values and financial goals, or whether family pressure would force compromises that might create lasting resentment and financial strain. The success I was achieving with Premier Recovery Solutions had provided confidence in my ability to build wealth and security through strategic thinking and disciplined execution. The business was proof that innovative approaches and ethical practices could create competitive advantages in even the most challenging industries. However, the family tensions surrounding wedding planning were revealing that success in business did not automatically translate into harmony in personal relationships, particularly when fundamental differences existed regarding values, priorities, and financial decision-making approaches. The lessons I was learning about managing family expectations would prove to be essential preparation for even more significant challenges that lay ahead. The spring months leading up to our planned October wedding brought unprecedented growth for Premier Recovery Solutions. but they also revealed disturbing patterns in my mother's behavior that should have served as warning signs for the betrayal that was approaching. The business had secured contracts with 12 medical practices and 6 small business clients, generating monthly revenue that exceeded our initial projections by nearly 40%. This success provided the financial foundation for the wedding celebration, while also validating the strategic decisions that had guided the company's development. The expansion of our client base required hiring additional staff members and implementing more sophisticated operational systems to maintain the service quality that differentiated us from competitors. Rebecca Thompson had proven exceptionally successful in her collection activities, achieving recovery rates that consistently exceeded industry standards, while receiving positive feedback from consumers who appreciated her professional and respectful communication approach. Based on Rebecca's success, I developed a comprehensive training program that could prepare new employees to implement our ethical collection methodologies effectively. The program combined technical knowledge about debt collection regulations with communication skills training and customer service principles that enabled staff members to achieve superior results while maintaining positive relationships with all stakeholders. Maria Santos joined our team as our second full-time collection specialist, bringing experience from the customer service department at a regional credit union. Her background in financial services provided understanding of consumer lending practices and regulatory requirements that enhanced her effectiveness in resolving complex collection cases. Elena, I am impressed by the systematic approach you have developed for collection activities, Maria told me after completing the training program. Most agencies seem to rely on intimidation and pressure, but your methodology focuses on problem solving and finding solutions that work for everyone involved. This approach feels much more professional and sustainable. Her observation highlighted the fundamental difference between our approach and the adversarial strategies employed by most collection agencies. Traditional companies viewed debt collection as a zero-sum conflict where consumer resistance had to be overcome through pressure and persistence. Our methodology treated collection activities as collaborative problem-solving opportunities, where creative solutions could achieve better outcomes for all parties. The success of this approach was becoming evident in our performance metrics, which showed recovery rates that were consistently 25 to 30% higher than industry averages. Additionally, our client satisfaction scores were exceptional, and we had achieved a consumer complaint rate that was less than half the industry standard. These results were attracting attention from larger potential clients who were interested in working with a collection agency that could achieve superior outcomes while also protecting their customer relationships. Regional Hospital Corporation contacted us about handling collections for their network of 6 facilities, which would represent the largest client contract in our company's history. Dr. Kenneth Martinez served as the Chief Financial Officer for Regional Hospital Corporation and was responsible for evaluating collection agencies based on both financial performance and alignment with the organization's values and patient care standards. The hospital network had experienced difficulties with previous collection agencies that achieved poor results, while also creating negative experiences for patients who might require future medical services. Elena, we are particularly interested in your approach because healthcare collection presents unique challenges that require sensitivity and professionalism, Dr. Martinez explained during our initial presentation. Our patients are dealing with serious health issues, and collection activities need to be conducted in ways that respect their circumstances while also helping them resolve their financial obligations. The opportunity to work with Regional Hospital Corporation would provide significant revenue growth while also establishing our reputation with a prominent healthcare organization that could serve as a reference for additional clients. However, the contract would also require expanding our staff and operational capacity substantially to handle the increased case volume effectively. The business expansion created exciting opportunities but also generated significant stress as I worked to manage growth, while maintaining the service quality and ethical standards that had driven our initial success. The demands of scaling operations required careful attention to hiring, training, and quality control processes that would preserve our competitive advantages as the company grew larger. Michael had been supportive throughout the business development process, understanding that building a successful company required intense focus and long working hours during the critical early stages. His own career was progressing well at the technology firm where he worked as a software engineer, and we were both looking forward to the wedding as an opportunity to celebrate our personal relationship, while also acknowledging the professional achievements we had accomplished individually. The wedding planning process had become increasingly complicated, as my mother's involvement intensified and her suggestions consistently exceeded our established budget. Carmen had contacted vendors directly to request upgrades and additions that we had not authorized, creating confusion and potential financial commitments that could substantially increase our costs. The most significant incident occurred when I discovered that my mother had met with the catering manager at our reception venue to discuss menu modifications that would add nearly $3,000 to our catering costs. She had presented these changes as decisions that Michael and I had already approved, and the caterer had begun planning menus and ordering ingredients based on her instructions. "Elena, I was trying to help by handling some of the details so you could focus on your business," my mother explained when I confronted her about the unauthorized changes. "The original menu seemed too basic for such an important celebration, and I wanted to make sure your guests would be impressed by the quality of the food and service." Her explanation revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of our priorities and decision-making process. Michael and I had carefully selected menu options that balanced quality with cost considerations, and the unauthorized upgrades represented exactly the kind of budget inflation that we had been working to avoid throughout the planning process. The incident required uncomfortable conversations with vendors to clarify our actual preferences and financial limitations, while also addressing the confusion created by my mother's unauthorized communications. Several vendors expressed frustration about receiving conflicting information from different family members, and we had to implement clear protocols to prevent future misunderstandings. My father attempted to mediate the situation by suggesting that perhaps we could accommodate some of my mother's preferences, while also maintaining most of our original budget parameters. His diplomatic approach was motivated by genuine concern for family harmony, but it failed to address the underlying issue that my mother was making decisions without consulting us and creating financial obligations that we had not agreed to accept. "Miguel, you need to understand that Elena and Michael have worked hard to build successful careers, and they can afford to have a beautiful wedding," my mother argued during a family discussion about the catering situation. "They should not have to compromise on their special day just because they are too conservative with their spending." Her perspective reflected a complete misunderstanding of our financial situation and our reasons for establishing budget parameters. The wedding fund represented a significant portion of our liquid assets, and we had carefully planned expenses to ensure that the celebration would not compromise our ability to continue investing in business growth and building long-term financial security. The tension surrounding wedding planning was creating stress that extended beyond simple disagreements about vendor selection and menu options. Carmen seemed to view our financial discipline as a personal rejection of her opinions and values, and she had begun making comments that suggested she felt excluded from important decisions about the celebration. The situation was particularly challenging, because my mother's suggestions often reflected genuine enthusiasm and desire to create a memorable celebration. But her approach consistently ignored the financial constraints that guided our decision-making process. Her emotional investment in the wedding planning seemed to be increasing rather than decreasing as the date approached, and her behavior was becoming more assertive and demanding. During this period, I also began noticing changes in my mother's overall financial behavior that suggested she was experiencing money problems beyond the normal challenges that had characterized her spending patterns throughout my childhood. Carmen had begun asking for small loans more frequently, citing unexpected expenses and temporary cash flow problems that would be resolved within a few weeks. The requests were typically for amounts between $200 and $500, and she always provided detailed explanations about car repairs, medical bills, or utility deposits that required immediate payment. My father seemed unaware of these requests, which suggested that my mother was managing some financial issues independently rather than addressing them as family problems. My success with Premier Recovery Solutions had created a perception within the family that I had unlimited financial resources and could easily provide assistance whenever anyone needed help. This perception was inaccurate, as the business was still in its growth phase and required continued investment to maintain its competitive position and expansion trajectory. However, my mother's requests for financial assistance were presented as temporary loans that would be repaid quickly, and the amounts were small enough that they did not create immediate hardship for my personal finances. I provided the requested assistance while also encouraging her to develop better long-term financial planning strategies that could prevent similar problems in the future. "Elena, I really appreciate your help with these temporary situations," my mother told me after one of these transactions. Once Richard starts his new job, our financial situation will be much more stable, and I will be able to pay you back and also contribute more to the wedding expenses." Her reference to Richard confused me, as I was not aware of any new relationship or employment situation that might affect her financial circumstances. When I asked for clarification, she explained that she had been dating someone for several months, and that their relationship was becoming serious enough to consider combining their financial resources and living arrangements. Richard Marcus was a man in his early 50s who worked in construction and had recently moved to Connecticut from Pennsylvania to pursue employment opportunities in our area. My mother had met him through mutual friends, and their relationship had developed quickly into what she described as a serious romantic partnership with potential for marriage. The revelation that my mother was in a new relationship that might lead to remarriage was surprising, as she had not mentioned dating anyone seriously since her divorce from my father had been finalized several years earlier. The secrecy surrounding this relationship raised questions about why she had not shared this important development with the family sooner. My father's reaction to learning about Richard's existence was complicated by the fact that he and my mother maintained an amicable relationship despite their divorce, and he genuinely wanted her to find happiness and stability. However, he was also concerned about the rapid progression of a relationship that none of us had known existed until recently. "Elena, I hope your mother has been careful about getting involved with someone we do not know well," my father told me during a private conversation about the situation. "She has always been trusting of people, sometimes too trusting, and I worry about someone taking advantage of her generous nature." His concerns reflected understanding of my mother's personality traits that had contributed to financial difficulties throughout their marriage. Carmen tended to make decisions based on emotion rather than careful analysis, and she often trusted people without conducting adequate research about their backgrounds or motivations. The timing of this relationship revelation was particularly concerning because it coincided with my mother's increasing financial requests and her escalating demands for wedding upgrades that exceeded our budget. The connection between these developments was not immediately obvious, but the pattern suggested that external factors might be influencing her behavior in ways that could affect our family relationships and financial planning. Michael and I decided to meet Richard during a family dinner that would allow us to evaluate his character and understand his intentions regarding his relationship with my mother. The dinner was scheduled for a Saturday evening at my parents' house, providing a comfortable environment for conversation while also demonstrating family unity and concern for my mother's well-being. Richard Marcus appeared to be a pleasant and straightforward individual who worked as a construction foreman and had moved to Connecticut to supervise a large commercial development project. His conversation was engaging, and he seemed genuinely interested in my mother's happiness and well-being. However, there were subtle aspects of his presentation that created mild concern about his financial situation and long-term stability. During dinner conversation, Richard mentioned that he had experienced some financial difficulties related to his relocation and the transition between employment positions. He explained that moving expenses and the deposit requirements for his new apartment had created temporary cash flow challenges that would be resolved once he received his first full paycheck from the new construction project. "Carmen has been incredibly supportive during this transition period," Richard told us during dinner. "She understands that relocating for career opportunities sometimes requires short-term sacrifices for long-term benefits, and her encouragement has meant everything to me during this challenging time." His comments suggested that my mother had been providing financial assistance to support his relocation and transition, which would explain her increased requests for money and her growing interest in accessing additional funds for various purposes. The realization that she might be using money intended for family purposes to support a new boyfriend's financial difficulties was deeply concerning. After dinner, I had a private conversation with my mother about Richard's financial situation and her role in providing support during his transition period. Carmen was defensive about the topic, insisting that her assistance was minimal and temporary, and that Richard was a responsible person who would repay any help she had provided once his financial situation stabilized. "Elena, you have to understand that when you care about someone, you want to help them succeed," my mother explained. "Richard is working hard to build a stable life here, and sometimes that requires temporary assistance from people who believe in your potential." Her explanation revealed the emotional reasoning that was driving her financial decisions, but it did not address the practical concerns about using family resources to support someone whose background and financial reliability had not been thoroughly evaluated. The situation created questions about judgment and priorities that would prove to be prophetic regarding future developments. The wedding planning continued amid these family complications, but the underlying tensions were creating stress that affected our ability to enjoy what should have been an exciting and celebratory period. My mother's behavior was becoming increasingly unpredictable, and her financial requests were becoming more frequent and less clearly justified by legitimate expenses. The success of Premier Recovery Solutions provided financial resources that enabled me to manage these family complications without compromising my personal or business goals. However, the pattern of manipulation and poor decision-making that was emerging in my mother's behavior suggested that more significant challenges might be approaching. The warning signs were becoming evident for those who understood financial behavior patterns and the psychology of dependency relationships. My education and professional experience had taught me to recognize red flags that indicated potential problems, but emotional attachments and family loyalty created blind spots that prevented me from fully anticipating the extent of the betrayal that was being planned. The foundation was being established for the most devastating breach of trust that I would ever experience, but it was hidden beneath layers of family dynamics, romantic relationship complications, and financial manipulations that would not become fully apparent until the damage had already been inflicted. The summer months preceding our October wedding brought remarkable achievements for Premier Recovery Solutions, alongside increasingly troubling developments in my family relationships that would ultimately culminate in devastating betrayal. The company had successfully secured the Regional Hospital Corporation contract, which represented a transformative milestone that validated our innovative approach to debt collection while providing the financial foundation for sustained growth and market expansion. The hospital contract required doubling our staff within 6 weeks, a challenging timeline that demanded careful attention to recruitment, training, and operational integration. The expansion created opportunities to implement advanced technology systems and develop specialized expertise in healthcare collections, positioning Premier Recovery Solutions as the premier ethical collection agency in the regional market. Sarah Kim joined our team as operations manager, bringing experience from a major regional bank where she had supervised customer service operations and compliance programs. Her background in financial services regulation and process management proved invaluable as we developed systems that could handle increased case volume while maintaining the service quality standards that differentiated our company from competitors. Elena, the systematic approach you have developed for ethical collections represents a genuine innovation in this industry, Sarah observed during her first week with the company. Most agencies operate with adversarial mindsets that create negative outcomes for everyone involved, but your methodology transforms collection activities into collaborative problem-solving opportunities that achieve superior results. Her assessment reflected the growing recognition within the financial services industry that Premier Recovery Solutions had developed capabilities that exceeded traditional collection approaches. The combination of ethical practices, technological innovation, and superior outcomes was creating demand that outpaced our ability to expand operations, a positive challenge that required strategic planning and careful resource allocation. The success with healthcare collections had attracted attention from other service industries that struggled with similar challenges related to outstanding receivables and customer relationship management. Legal practices, accounting firms, and professional services companies began requesting consultations about our collection methodologies and potential service arrangements. Peterson & Associates was a regional law firm specializing in personal injury and business litigation that maintained excellent client relationships but struggled with outstanding legal fees that affected cash flow and limited their ability to take on additional cases. Traditional collection agencies had achieved poor results while also creating negative experiences that damaged relationships with clients who might require future legal services. Attorney Michael Peterson had built his practice on the foundation of personal service and ethical representation, values that aligned closely with our company's approach to debt collection. His willingness to work with Premier Recovery Solutions provided an opportunity to expand into legal services collections, while also demonstrating our capabilities with a professional services client. Elena, I am particularly interested in your approach because legal fee collections present unique challenges that require understanding of attorney-client relationships and the sensitive nature of legal matters, Attorney Peterson explained during our initial consultation. Our clients are dealing with serious legal issues, and collection activities need to be conducted with complete professionalism and discretion. The legal services contract provided additional diversification of our client base, while also establishing relationships within the legal community that could lead to referrals and additional business opportunities. The success across multiple industries demonstrated that our ethical collection methodology was applicable to various service sectors that prioritized customer relationships and professional reputation. The business growth required careful financial management to ensure that expansion did not compromise our ability to maintain service quality or financial stability during the transition period. The increased revenue from new contracts provided resources for hiring and technology investments, but the timing of payments created cash flow considerations that required strategic planning and working capital management. Michael had been exceptionally supportive throughout the business expansion process, understanding that building a successful company required intense focus and long working hours during critical growth phases. His own career continued progressing at the technology firm where he worked, and he had recently been promoted to senior software engineer, with increased responsibilities and compensation that enhanced our combined financial position. The wedding planning should have been progressing smoothly given our improved financial situation and the approaching date, but my mother's behavior had become increasingly erratic and demanding. Carmen's suggestions for wedding upgrades had escalated beyond reasonable modifications to proposals that would fundamentally alter our planned celebration, while requiring substantial additional expenditures. The most concerning development occurred when I discovered that my mother had contacted our wedding venue coordinator to discuss relocating the reception to a more expensive ballroom that would accommodate additional guests and provide upgraded amenities. She had presented this proposal as a decision that Michael and I were considering, and the venue coordinator had begun developing pricing proposals based on her inquiry. Elena, I thought you might want to consider upgrading to the grand ballroom since your business has been so successful, my mother explained when I confronted her about the unauthorized venue inquiry. The original space seems too small for someone of your professional stature, and the upgraded venue would create a much more impressive celebration for your guests. Her explanation revealed the extent to which she had developed unrealistic expectations about our wedding celebration and our willingness to substantially increase expenses to accommodate her vision of appropriate social status. The unauthorized venue inquiry required immediate clarification with the wedding coordinator to prevent confusion and potential financial commitments that we had not approved. The pattern of unauthorized communications with wedding vendors had become systematic, with my mother contacting florists, photographers, and entertainment providers to discuss upgrades and additions that exceeded our established budget. Each incident required uncomfortable conversations to clarify our actual preferences, while also managing vendor relationships that had been complicated by conflicting information. My father had become increasingly concerned about my mother's behavior, but his attempts to address the situation diplomatically had proven ineffective. Carmen seemed to interpret any criticism of her wedding suggestions as personal rejection and evidence that we did not appreciate her efforts to create a memorable celebration. Elena, I am worried that your mother is creating problems that could affect your relationship with Michael and also damage your family relationships. My father told me during a private conversation about the escalating wedding complications. She seems to have developed expectations that do not align with reality, and I am not sure how to help her understand the impact of her behavior. His concern reflected growing recognition that the wedding planning difficulties were symptoms of larger issues related to my mother's relationship with money and her inability to accept boundaries that we had established for practical and financial reasons. The situation was creating stress that extended beyond wedding planning into broader questions about family dynamics and financial responsibility. During this period, my mother's requests for financial assistance had become more frequent and substantial, with explanations that consistently involved Richard's ongoing transition challenges and their combined living expenses. The pattern suggested that she was providing significant financial support to subsidize his relocation and employment situation, potentially using family resources for purposes that we had not discussed or approved. The most significant request occurred when Carmen asked for a loan of $1,500 to help cover Richard's security deposit for a better apartment that would be more suitable for their developing relationship. She explained that his current living situation was temporary and that the upgrade would provide stability that could support his job performance and their future planning. Elena, this investment in Richard's stability will benefit our entire family because it will help him establish roots in our community. My mother argued when I expressed concern about the substantial loan amount. He is working hard to build a life here, and this assistance will help ensure his success while also supporting our relationship. Her reasoning reflected the emotional decision-making patterns that had characterized her financial choices throughout my childhood. But the amounts involved were becoming substantial enough to create concern about her overall financial situation and her ability to repay the assistance she was requesting from family members. My professional experience with debt collection had taught me to recognize warning signs that indicated potential financial problems, and my mother's behavior was displaying several concerning patterns. The increasing frequency of loan requests, the escalating amounts, and the emotional explanations suggested dependency relationships and poor financial planning that could lead to more serious difficulties. However, my emotional attachment to family relationships created blind spots that prevented me from fully acknowledging the extent of the problems that were developing. The success of Premier Recovery Solutions had provided financial resources that enabled me to assist family members without immediate hardship, and my mother's explanations seemed plausible even when they raised questions about judgment and priorities. The wedding fund that Michael and I had been accumulating represented our largest liquid asset aside from business accounts that were reserved for operational purposes. The account contained approximately $32,000 that would cover all wedding expenses, while also providing reserves for unexpected costs and post-wedding financial planning. The fund was maintained in a separate savings account that my mother had helped establish when we began wedding planning, and she had been added as a secondary account holder to facilitate emergency access if we were traveling or unavailable during critical planning periods. This arrangement had seemed reasonable when implemented, but it provided access capabilities that would prove to be dangerous given the financial pressure she was experiencing. During late August, approximately 6 weeks before our wedding date, I began noticing irregularities in our wedding planning communications that suggested coordination problems between my mother and our various vendors. Several providers contacted me directly to confirm arrangements that my mother had reportedly modified, creating confusion about our actual preferences and financial commitments. The florist called to verify an order modification that would add nearly $800 to our floral arrangements, explaining that Carmen had requested substantial upgrades to the centerpieces and bridal bouquet that would require additional flowers and design time. The photographer contacted me about additional services that my mother had discussed, including extended coverage and additional prints that would increase our photography costs by over $1,000. Elena, your mother has been very enthusiastic about creating the perfect wedding celebration, the photographer explained during our conversation. She has suggested several enhancements that would certainly create beautiful memories, but I wanted to confirm these additions with you before proceeding with the arrangements. The pattern of unauthorized vendor modifications had become systematic and concerning, suggesting that my mother was making decisions about our wedding without consulting us, while also creating financial obligations that exceeded our established budget. The situation required immediate intervention to prevent further complications and potential conflicts with vendors who were receiving conflicting information. The confrontation with my mother about these unauthorized modifications led to our most serious disagreement about wedding planning and financial boundaries. Carmen became defensive and emotional, arguing that her suggestions were motivated by love and desire to create the best possible celebration for our important milestone. Elena, I cannot understand why you are being so resistant to creating a beautiful wedding that reflects your success and our family's pride in your achievements, my mother said during our difficult conversation. You have worked hard to build a successful business, and your wedding should demonstrate the prosperity and status you have earned. Her perspective revealed fundamental misunderstanding of our values and priorities, as well as unrealistic expectations about our willingness to compromise financial discipline for the sake of appearances and social status. The wedding celebration was important to us, but it represented one milestone in building a life together rather than an opportunity to display wealth or status to impress others. The situation had reached a crisis point, where clear boundaries needed to be established to prevent further complications and protect our wedding planning from continued interference. Michael and I decided to implement strict protocols that would require our direct approval for any vendor communications or modifications, effectively removing my mother from direct involvement in planning decisions. The response to these new boundaries revealed the extent of my mother's emotional investment in controlling wedding arrangements, and her inability to accept limitations on her involvement in our decision-making process. Carmen interpreted the new protocols as personal rejection and evidence that we did not value her opinions or contributions to our celebration. The family tensions surrounding wedding planning were creating stress that affected our ability to enjoy what should have been an exciting period of preparation for our marriage. The complications were also consuming time and emotional energy that would have been better directed toward business development and personal relationship building. Premier Recovery Solutions continued achieving exceptional results despite the personal stress created by family complications. The company had established relationships with 15 clients across multiple industries, and our reputation for ethical practices and superior outcomes was generating referral opportunities that exceeded our capacity to pursue them effectively. The success provided financial security that enabled us to manage family complications without compromising our personal or business goals, but the emotional toll of ongoing conflicts was becoming significant. The pattern of manipulation and boundary violations suggested that more serious challenges might be approaching, but the specific nature of the threat remained hidden beneath layers of family dynamics and financial deception. The foundation was being established for the most devastating betrayal that I would experience, but the warning signs were camouflaged by emotional explanations and family loyalty that prevented me from recognizing the full extent of the danger that was developing. The combination of financial access, emotional manipulation, and dependency relationships was creating conditions for a violation of trust that would test everything I had learned about resilience, recovery, and the true meaning of family relationships. The final weeks of September brought extraordinary achievements for Premier Recovery Solutions that demonstrated the power of ethical business practices to create sustainable competitive advantages in even the most challenging industries. The company had successfully completed the integration of Regional Hospital Corporation's collection portfolio, achieving recovery rates that exceeded their previous agency's performance by 37%, while maintaining exceptional client satisfaction scores and minimal consumer complaints. The success with healthcare collections had established Premier Recovery Solutions as the regional leader in ethical debt collection services, creating demand from potential clients that required strategic evaluation to ensure sustainable growth without compromising service quality. The company's reputation for achieving superior results through innovative methodologies was generating opportunities that exceeded our current operational capacity. Dr. Catherine Walsh, Chief Financial Officer for Metro Health Systems, contacted our office to discuss collection services for their network of 12 medical facilities throughout central Connecticut. The potential contract represented the largest client opportunity in our company's history, with case volumes that would require doubling our current staffing levels and implementing advanced technology systems to manage the increased operational complexity. Elena, we have been following your company's performance with Regional Hospital Corporation, and we are impressed by your ability to achieve exceptional recovery rates while maintaining positive relationships with patients, Dr. Walsh explained during our initial consultation. Healthcare collections require special sensitivity and professionalism, and your approach aligns perfectly with our commitment to patient care and community service. The Metro Health Systems opportunity would establish Premier Recovery Solutions as the dominant ethical collection agency in the regional healthcare market, while providing revenue growth that could support expansion into other geographic areas and service industries. The contract negotiations required careful attention to operational capacity, technology requirements, and staffing timelines that would ensure successful implementation without compromising existing client relationships. The business success was creating financial resources that provided security and opportunities for continued growth. But it also generated increased demands on my time and attention during a period when wedding planning should have been my primary personal focus. The timing created stress that was compounded by ongoing family complications and my mother's increasingly erratic behavior regarding wedding arrangements. Michael had been exceptionally understanding about the business demands during this critical growth phase, recognizing that establishing Premier Recovery Solutions as the market leader would provide long-term financial security that would benefit our marriage and future family planning. His support enabled me to pursue these extraordinary business opportunities while maintaining our personal relationship and wedding preparations. However, the success of Premier Recovery Solutions had also created unrealistic expectations within my family about my financial capabilities and willingness to provide assistance for various purposes. My mother's perception of my wealth and resources exceeded the reality of my financial situation, as most of the company's assets were invested in operational systems, staffing, and working capital rather than personal liquidity. The pattern of financial requests from my mother had escalated throughout September, with explanations that consistently involved Richard's employment challenges and their combined living expenses. The amounts had grown from hundreds to thousands of dollars, and the frequency suggested that she was providing substantial ongoing financial support that exceeded her personal resources. The most concerning development occurred when Carmen requested a loan of $4,000 to help Richard address what she described as temporary tax obligations that were preventing him from maintaining his employment with the construction company. Her explanation was vague and emotional, focusing on the importance of supporting someone she loved rather than providing specific details about the nature of the tax problems or the timeline for resolution. Elena, Richard is a good man who is working hard to build a stable life here, but he needs temporary assistance to resolve some complications from his previous residence. My mother explained during our conversation about the substantial loan request. This support will help him maintain his employment and continue building our relationship, which is important for my happiness and our family's future. Her emotional appeal was consistent with previous requests, but the amount was substantial enough to require careful consideration of the purpose and likelihood of repayment. My professional experience with debt collection had taught me to evaluate loan requests based on specific details and realistic repayment plans rather than emotional explanations and vague promises. When I requested more information about Richard's tax situation and the specific nature of the obligations that required immediate payment, my mother became defensive and emotional, arguing that such detailed questioning demonstrated lack of trust and family support. Her reaction suggested that she either did not understand the specifics of Richard's financial problems or was deliberately avoiding disclosure of information that might raise additional concerns. The conversation revealed fundamental differences in our approaches to financial decision-making and risk evaluation. My education and business experience had taught me to base financial commitments on careful analysis and realistic expectations, while my mother's perspective was driven by emotional attachment and optimistic assumptions about future outcomes. During this period, I began conducting discrete research about Richard's background and financial history to better understand the situation that was affecting my family relationships and creating increasing demands for financial assistance. The investigation revealed information that was significantly more concerning than the temporary employment challenges that my mother had described. Richard Marcus had a complex financial history that included multiple court judgments, defaulted loans, and unpaid obligations that extended back several years across multiple states. The public records revealed a pattern of financial irresponsibility and legal problems that suggested systemic issues rather than temporary difficulties related to employment transitions. Most significantly, the research revealed that Richard owed substantial amounts to multiple creditors, including several collection agencies that were actively pursuing payment for defaulted credit cards, personal loans, and unpaid rent obligations. The total amount of outstanding debt exceeded $50,000, representing obligations that could not be resolved through temporary assistance or employment income alone. The discovery of Richard's extensive debt history provided context for understanding my mother's escalating financial requests and her emotional investment in supporting his efforts to establish stability in Connecticut. She was apparently attempting to help him manage multiple financial obligations that he had not disclosed fully when they began their relationship. The most shocking revelation emerged when I discovered that one of the collection agencies pursuing Richard's debts was Premier Recovery Solutions. Richard Marcus appeared in our client database as a debtor who owed nearly $8,000 to Metro Credit Union for a defaulted personal loan that had been placed for collection approximately 6 months earlier. The realization that my own company was attempting to collect debt from my mother's boyfriend created an extraordinary situation that raised complex questions about professional ethics, family relationships, and the appropriate response to this unprecedented conflict of interest. The discovery explained the secrecy surrounding Richard's financial situation and provided insight into the desperation that was driving my mother's financial support efforts. The Metro Credit Union account had been assigned to Rebecca Thompson, who had been attempting to contact Richard through phone calls and written communications for several months without success. The file indicated that Richard had been unresponsive to collection efforts and had not made any payments or contacted our office to discuss resolution options. "Elena, I have been working on this Metro Credit Union case for months without any response from the debtor," Rebecca reported during our regular case review meeting. "Richard Marcus seems to have disappeared, or is deliberately avoiding our collection efforts. The file indicates that he previously lived in Pennsylvania, but his current location is unknown." Her assessment revealed that Richard had been deliberately evading collection efforts, while simultaneously developing a relationship with my mother and requesting financial assistance for what he characterized as temporary employment challenges. The deception suggested sophisticated manipulation and planning rather than simple financial difficulties that could be resolved through temporary support. The professional and personal implications of this discovery required careful consideration of appropriate responses that would protect both my business interests and family relationships. The situation created potential conflicts between my fiduciary responsibilities to Metro Credit Union and my desire to avoid family complications that could affect my mother's emotional well-being. The ethical considerations were complex because my knowledge of Richard's location and relationship status had been obtained through personal rather than professional channels, but the information was relevant to Premier Recovery Solutions, collection efforts on behalf of our client. The situation required consultation with industry professionals and legal advisors to determine appropriate courses of action. Thomas Richardson, my business advisor and investor, provided valuable perspective on managing the conflict of interest while maintaining professional integrity and client obligations. His experience with ethical business practices helped clarify the responsibilities and options that were available for addressing this unprecedented situation. "Elena, this situation requires separating your personal relationships from your professional obligations while also considering the implications for all parties involved," Thomas advised during our consultation. "Your responsibility to Metro Credit Union requires pursuing collection efforts, but the approach should be professional and ethical, regardless of personal complications." Quote, his guidance helped establish a framework for managing the situation that would fulfill business obligations while minimizing family disruption. The approach would involve standard collection procedures that treated Richard as any other debtor, while avoiding the use of personal information that had been obtained through family relationships. However, the discovery of Richard's deception and extensive debt history raised serious questions about his motivations for pursuing a relationship with my mother, and the likelihood that her financial assistance was enabling continued irresponsible behavior rather than supporting legitimate efforts to achieve stability. The investigation also revealed that Richard's debt problems extended beyond the obligations being handled by Premier Recovery Solutions. Multiple collection agencies were pursuing various defaulted accounts, and several creditors had obtained court judgments that could result in wage garnishment or asset seizure if Richard maintained employment or acquired property in Connecticut. The scope of Richard's financial problems suggested that my mother's assistance, regardless of the amount, would not be sufficient to resolve his obligations or create the stability that she was hoping to support. The situation represented a pattern of dependency that could continue indefinitely without achieving meaningful improvement in his circumstances. The emotional impact of discovering this deception was compounded by recognition that my mother was being manipulated by someone who had deliberately concealed the extent of his financial problems, while requesting assistance that she could not afford to provide. The relationship was based on false premises that were creating financial and emotional damage for our entire family. The timing of this discovery was particularly devastating because it occurred just 3 weeks before our wedding date, during a period when family harmony and emotional stability were essential for enjoying this important milestone. The revelation created an urgent need to address Richard's deception while also protecting my mother from additional manipulation and financial exploitation. The situation required careful planning to expose Richard's dishonesty while providing support for my mother's emotional recovery from the betrayal she was experiencing. The approach needed to demonstrate the extent of his deception while also preserving her dignity and self-respect during a period when she would be vulnerable to additional manipulation. The business success that had created financial resources for family assistance had also provided the professional expertise necessary to investigate and understand the extent of the deception that was affecting our family relationships. The irony was devastating but also educational about the importance of applying professional standards to personal relationships when substantial financial commitments were involved. Premier Recovery Solutions had achieved extraordinary success through ethical practices and professional integrity, principles that would guide the response to this personal crisis, while also fulfilling business obligations to clients who depended on our services. The situation would test whether the values that had driven business success could also provide guidance for managing complex family problems that required courage and difficult decisions. The foundation was established for confronting Richard's deception and protecting my mother from continued manipulation, but the intervention would require careful timing and strategic approach to minimize emotional damage, while ensuring that truth was revealed and appropriate consequences were implemented. The collection agency that I had built would become the instrument of justice for my own family's protection. The discovery of Richard's presence in our collection database transformed my understanding of the family crisis from emotional manipulation into calculated fraud that required immediate professional intervention. The complexity of the situation demanded strategic planning that would protect my mother from continued exploitation while fulfilling my ethical obligations to Metro Credit Union and maintaining the integrity of Premier Recovery Solutions. The Metro Health System's contract negotiations provided temporary respite from the personal crisis, while demonstrating that professional success could coexist with complex personal challenges when proper boundaries and systematic approaches were maintained. The healthcare organization's leadership team had conducted extensive due diligence regarding our company's capabilities and reputation, resulting in contract terms that exceeded our initial expectations, and established Premier Recovery Solutions as the premier ethical collection agency in the regional market. Dr. Catherine Walsh's evaluation process had included interviews with existing clients, review of performance metrics, and assessment of our operational systems that demonstrated the comprehensive value proposition we had developed through innovation and ethical practices. The contract would generate annual revenue of approximately $1.2 million, while providing opportunities for additional services and geographic expansion. Elena, your company's approach to healthcare collections represents exactly what our industry needs to maintain positive patient relationships while managing financial obligations effectively, Dr. Walsh explained during the contract signing ceremony. The combination of superior recovery rates and ethical practices creates value for all stakeholders, while supporting our mission of providing quality healthcare services to our community. The Metro Health Systems partnership validated the business model we had developed and provided financial resources that would support continued growth and innovation. The success demonstrated that ethical practices and professional excellence could create sustainable competitive advantages that generated premium pricing and long-term client relationships. However, the business achievements were overshadowed by the urgent need to address Richard's deception and protect my mother from continued financial exploitation. The situation required careful coordination between personal intervention and professional collection activities that would expose his dishonesty, while maintaining appropriate boundaries between family relationships and business operations. The ethical framework that guided Premier Recovery Solutions provided clear direction for managing the professional aspects of Richard's debt collection, while ensuring that personal knowledge did not compromise our fiduciary responsibilities to Metro Credit Union. The approach would involve standard collection procedures that treated Richard as any other debtor, while documenting all interactions according to industry regulations and company policies. Rebecca Thompson had been managing Richard's collection case with professional competence, following established protocols for unresponsive debtors who avoided contact and failed to address their financial obligations. Her systematic approach had documented multiple contact attempts and provided comprehensive records that would support escalated collection efforts if Richard continued avoiding resolution discussions. Elena, the Richard Marcus case has followed typical patterns for debtors who are deliberately evading collection efforts, Rebecca reported during our case review meeting. We have attempted contact through multiple channels without response, and the file is ready for consideration of legal action or third-party location services to determine his current address and employment status. Her professional assessment provided the foundation for revealing Richard's location and employment information through legitimate business channels that would not compromise family relationships or violate ethical guidelines. The information would be obtained through standard collection procedures, rather than personal knowledge, maintaining appropriate separation between professional and personal activities. The timing of this intervention required careful consideration of the approaching wedding date and my mother's emotional investment in her relationship with Richard. The revelation of his deception would be devastating regardless of timing, but the approach could be structured to provide maximum protection for her well-being, while ensuring that truth was disclosed before additional financial damage occurred. Michael had been observing the family tensions with growing concern and had offered to support whatever approach I determined would be most effective for protecting my mother, while addressing Richard's fraudulent behavior. His perspective as an outside observer provided valuable insights about the manipulation tactics that Richard had employed and the psychological factors that had enabled his success. Elena, I believe your mother genuinely cares about Richard and wants to help him succeed, but she has been deceived about the nature of his problems and the likelihood that her assistance will achieve positive outcomes, Michael observed during one of our discussions about intervention strategies. The truth needs to be revealed carefully to minimize emotional damage while ensuring that she understands the extent of the deception. His analysis helped clarify the emotional dynamics that would need to be addressed during the intervention process. My mother's financial support for Richard was motivated by genuine affection and optimism about their future together, making the revelation of his dishonesty particularly painful and potentially damaging to her self-confidence and trust in future relationships. The investigation of Richard's financial history had revealed additional concerning information beyond the debt collection case being handled by Premier Recovery Solutions. Court records indicated multiple civil judgments, defaulted rental agreements, and unpaid utility obligations that suggested chronic financial irresponsibility rather than temporary difficulties related to employment transitions. The pattern of financial problems extended across multiple states and included obligations to various types of creditors, indicating that Richard had developed sophisticated strategies for avoiding payment while maintaining access to credit and services. The scope of his deception suggested experience with manipulating personal relationships to obtain financial support while evading legitimate collection efforts. Most concerning was evidence that Richard had used similar relationship-based financial support strategies in previous locations, suggesting that his pursuit of my mother represented a calculated approach to obtaining resources while avoiding accountability for existing obligations. The pattern indicated predatory behavior that specifically targeted vulnerable individuals who could provide financial assistance. The documentation of Richard's financial history provided compelling evidence of deception that could be presented to my mother in ways that demonstrated the systematic nature of his dishonesty without requiring disclosure of confidential business information or violating professional ethical guidelines. The public records were accessible through legitimate research channels and provided objective evidence that could not be dismissed as personal opinion or family interference. The intervention strategy required coordination between revealing Richard's true financial situation and implementing collection activities that would demonstrate Premier Recovery Solutions' professional capabilities while fulfilling our obligations to Metro Credit Union. The approach would show my mother that her financial assistance was supporting someone who had no intention of resolving his obligations through legitimate means. During this planning period, my mother's financial requests had continued escalating both in frequency and amount, with explanations that suggested Richard's problems were becoming more urgent and required immediate assistance to prevent serious consequences. The desperation in her communications indicated that Richard was applying increasing pressure for financial support while providing increasingly dramatic explanations about the nature of his difficulties. The most alarming development occurred when Carmen contacted me requesting emergency assistance of $7,000 to prevent what she described as legal action that could result in Richard losing his employment and being forced to leave Connecticut. Her explanation was emotional and urgent, suggesting that immediate payment was necessary to resolve tax obligations that were threatening his professional licensing. Elena, Richard's situation has become critical, and he needs immediate help to prevent losing everything he has worked to build here, my mother explained during our phone conversation. The tax authorities are threatening to contact his employer, which could result in termination and destroy his ability to establish stability in our community. Her description of the emergency suggested that Richard was using increasingly sophisticated manipulation tactics to create urgency and justify larger financial requests. The timeline and consequences she described did not align with typical tax collection procedures, indicating that Richard was likely fabricating details to increase pressure for immediate assistance. The request for $7,000 represented a substantial portion of our wedding fund and exceeded the amount that I could provide without affecting our celebration plans or business cash flow requirements. The timing, just 2 weeks before our wedding date, suggested either coincidental urgency or deliberate timing to maximize emotional pressure during a period when family harmony was particularly important. The situation required immediate intervention to prevent my mother from making additional financial commitments that could affect her long-term security, while also protecting our wedding funds from being diverted to support Richard's deception. The approach would need to reveal the truth about his financial situation while providing emotional support for her recovery from the betrayal. The confrontation strategy involved scheduling a family meeting that would include my father, whose perspective and support would be essential for helping my mother understand the scope of Richard's deception and develop appropriate responses to his manipulation tactics. The meeting would present objective evidence about Richard's financial history, while providing a supportive environment for discussing the implications and developing protective measures. The documentation package included public records regarding Richard's court judgments, collection accounts, and civil legal actions that demonstrated the systematic nature of his financial irresponsibility. The information was presented in professional format that emphasized factual evidence rather than personal opinions or emotional reactions to his deception. Additionally, the package included information about Premier Recovery Solutions, collection activities regarding Richard's Metro Credit Union debt, presented in ways that demonstrated our professional obligation to pursue collection, while also revealing his continued avoidance of legitimate financial responsibilities. The timing of the family meeting was scheduled for the weekend preceding our wedding week, providing sufficient time for emotional processing, while ensuring that family relationships could be stabilized before our celebration. The approach prioritized protecting my mother's well-being, while ensuring that truth was revealed and appropriate protective measures were implemented. The business success that had provided financial resources for family assistance had also generated the professional expertise necessary to investigate and address sophisticated financial deception. The irony of the situation was both painful and educational, about the importance of applying professional standards to personal relationships when substantial financial commitments were involved. Premier Recovery Solutions had achieved extraordinary success through systematic approaches to complex financial problems, principles that would guide the intervention strategy while ensuring that family relationships were protected and strengthened through honest communication and appropriate boundaries. The collection agency that I had built would become the instrument of truth and justice for protecting my own family from continued exploitation. The foundation was established for revealing Richard's deception and implementing protective measures that would end his manipulation, while providing support for my mother's emotional recovery. The intervention would demonstrate that professional expertise and ethical principles could address personal crises while maintaining family relationships based on trust and mutual respect. The approaching wedding celebration would occur in an environment of truth and family unity, rather than deception and financial exploitation, ensuring that our important milestone was unmarred by ongoing manipulation and emotional stress. The resolution would demonstrate that courage and professional expertise could overcome even sophisticated deception when applied with strategic planning and family support. The weekend before our wedding week arrived with the weight of impending revelation that would fundamentally alter my family's understanding of trust, deception, and the consequences of emotional decision-making. The family meeting I had scheduled represented the culmination of weeks of careful planning and evidence gathering that would expose Richard's systematic fraud while providing the foundation for protecting my mother from continued exploitation. Premier Recovery Solutions had achieved remarkable stability during this turbulent period, demonstrating the resilience that ethical business practices and systematic operational approaches could provide even when personal crises threatened to disrupt professional focus. The company's performance metrics remained exceptional across all client relationships, with recovery rates and customer satisfaction scores that continued exceeding industry benchmarks despite the complex challenges I was managing simultaneously. The Metro Health Systems implementation had proceeded flawlessly under Sarah Kim's operational leadership, with the first month of collections achieving results that surpassed the contract projections by 18%. The success validated our capacity for managing multiple large-scale client relationships while maintaining the service quality standards that differentiated Premier Recovery Solutions from conventional collection agencies. Dr. Catherine Walsh had expressed exceptional satisfaction with our initial performance, noting that patient feedback regarding collection communications had been overwhelmingly positive compared to their previous agency's approach. The combination of superior recovery results and ethical practices was creating exactly the value proposition that healthcare organizations needed to maintain patient relationships while managing financial obligations effectively. Elena, your team's approach to patient communications has exceeded our expectations in every measurable category, Dr. Walsh reported during our first monthly performance review. The recovery rates are impressive, but equally important is the professional manner in which your staff handles sensitive conversations with patients who are often dealing with significant health and financial challenges simultaneously. The business success provided both financial security and professional confidence that enabled me to address the family crisis from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. The systematic problem-solving approaches that had driven Premier Recovery Solutions' growth would guide the intervention strategy, while ensuring that family relationships could be preserved and strengthened through honest communication and appropriate protective measures. The documentation package I had prepared for the family meeting contained comprehensive evidence of Richard's financial deception that would be impossible to dismiss or rationalize through emotional explanations. The public records revealed a pattern of irresponsible behavior that extended across multiple states and involved various types of creditors, demonstrating systematic fraud rather than temporary difficulties that could be resolved through financial assistance. Michael had been reviewing the evidence package to provide perspective from someone without emotional investment in the family relationships, ensuring that the presentation would be clear and compelling while also being sensitive to my mother's emotional vulnerability. His analysis confirmed that the evidence was overwhelming, and that Richard's deception represented predatory behavior specifically designed to exploit vulnerable individuals through romantic manipulation. Elena, the pattern documented in these records shows deliberate and systematic exploitation that has been refined through experience with multiple victims, Michael observed during our final preparation session. Your mother needs to understand that she is dealing with someone who has developed sophisticated techniques for avoiding accountability while extracting financial support from caring individuals. His assessment reinforced the importance of presenting the evidence in ways that would help my mother understand the calculated nature of Richard's behavior, while providing emotional support for her recovery from the betrayal. The revelation would be devastating regardless of presentation approach, but careful framing could minimize long-term psychological damage, while ensuring that protective measures were implemented effectively. My father had been briefed about the upcoming revelation, and had agreed to provide emotional support for my mother, while also helping her understand the implications of Richard's deception for her financial security and future relationships. His perspective as someone who understood her personality and emotional patterns would be essential for helping her process the information constructively. Elena, I am grateful that you discovered this deception before your mother suffered even greater financial damage, my father told me during our preparatory conversation. Carmen has always been trusting of people, sometimes too trusting, and this situation demonstrates why careful evaluation is important before making substantial financial commitments based on emotional attachments. His support provided confidence that the family intervention could achieve positive outcomes despite the emotional difficulty of exposing Richard's fraud. The approach would demonstrate that family relationships based on honesty and mutual protection were stronger than romantic attachments built on deception and manipulation. The family meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at my parents' house, providing a comfortable and private environment for difficult conversations while ensuring that all parties could participate without external distractions. The timing allowed sufficient processing time before wedding week activities, while avoiding conflict with business obligations that required my attention during weekdays. My mother arrived at the meeting expecting discussions about final wedding arrangements and family celebration planning, unaware that the conversation would instead focus on Richard's systematic deception and the financial exploitation she had been experiencing for months. Her enthusiasm about the upcoming wedding and her relationship with Richard made the approaching revelation particularly painful to contemplate. "Elena, I am so excited about your wedding celebration and the opportunity for Richard to meet more of our extended family," my mother said as we gathered in the living room. "He has been working so hard to establish himself in Connecticut, and this will be a wonderful opportunity for him to feel welcomed into our family community." Her comments highlighted the extent to which she had integrated Richard into her future planning and emotional investment, making the revelation of his deception more devastating, but also more urgent to prevent continued manipulation and financial damage. The intervention needed to occur before additional resources were committed to supporting someone whose intentions were fraudulent. The presentation began with factual information about debt collection procedures and the importance of transparency in financial relationships, providing educational context that would help my mother understand the significance of the evidence without immediately creating defensive reactions. The approach emphasized professional standards and ethical obligations rather than personal criticism or emotional judgments. "Mom, I need to share some important information that I discovered through my work at Premier Recovery Solutions," I began carefully. "This information relates to financial matters that affect our family, and I believe you need to understand the full situation before making additional decisions about financial assistance or relationship commitments." Her expression shifted from curiosity to concern as she recognized the serious tone of the conversation, but she remained receptive to hearing the information I needed to share. The transition from wedding planning expectations to financial crisis discussions required careful management to maintain her emotional stability while ensuring that critical information was communicated effectively. The revelation of Richard's presence in our collection database created immediate shock and confusion as my mother attempted to process the implications of this unexpected connection. The explanation of his defaulted Metro Credit Union loan and his continued avoidance of collection efforts provided concrete evidence of dishonesty that contradicted everything he had told her about his financial situation. "Elena, there must be some mistake or misunderstanding," my mother responded initially. "Richard told me about some temporary financial difficulties related to his relocation, but he has been working to resolve those issues responsibly. He would not have hidden something this significant from me." Her defensive reaction was expected and understandable given her emotional investment in the relationship, but the objective evidence required acknowledgement, regardless of her preferences or assumptions about Richard's character. The documentation provided facts that could not be dismissed through emotional explanations or optimistic interpretations of his behavior. The presentation continued with additional public records that revealed the scope of Richard's financial problems across multiple states and creditors, demonstrating that the Metro Credit Union debt represented only one component of extensive obligations that he had been avoiding for years. The pattern showed systematic irresponsibility that contradicted his claims about temporary difficulties that could be resolved through employment stability. My father's presence provided emotional support for my mother, while also reinforcing the seriousness of the situation and the need for protective measures to prevent continued exploitation. His understanding of her personality and emotional patterns enabled him to provide perspective that helped her process the information without becoming overwhelmed by feelings of betrayal and embarrassment. "Carmen, Elena has uncovered information that shows Richard has been deceiving you about his financial situation," my father explained gently. "This deception has serious implications for your financial security and emotional well-being, and we need to work together to address the situation constructively." The revelation of the court judgments and civil legal actions created additional shock as my mother began understanding the extent of Richard's financial problems and his deliberate concealment of information that was relevant to their relationship and her financial assistance decisions. The evidence showed sophisticated deception rather than simple avoidance of embarrassing personal difficulties. The most devastating moment occurred when I presented evidence suggesting that Richard had used similar relationship-based financial exploitation strategies in previous locations, indicating that his pursuit of my mother represented calculated predatory behavior rather than genuine romantic interest. The documentation showed a pattern of behavior that specifically targeted vulnerable individuals who could provide financial support. Mom, the evidence suggests that Richard has experience with using romantic relationships to obtain financial assistance while avoiding accountability for his legitimate obligations. I explained as gently as possible. This pattern indicates that his relationship with you may be motivated by access to financial resources rather than genuine emotional attachment. Her reaction to this revelation was immediate and devastating, as the implications of systematic manipulation and emotional exploitation became clear. The recognition that someone she loved and trusted had deliberately deceived her for financial gain created profound emotional pain that would require significant time and support to process constructively. The family meeting continued with discussions about protective measures that would prevent continued exploitation while providing emotional support for my mother's recovery from the betrayal. The approach emphasized family unity and shared responsibility for ensuring her financial security and emotional well-being during the difficult recovery period. Michael's presence during the latter portion of the meeting provided additional perspective and support, while demonstrating that the upcoming wedding celebration would proceed in an environment of family truth and protection, rather than ongoing deception and manipulation. His understanding and compassion helped reinforce that the intervention was motivated by love and concern, rather than interference or control. The immediate protective measures included changing access to financial accounts that Richard might have learned about, implementing communication protocols that would prevent further manipulation attempts, and establishing legal consultation to address any potential complications related to the financial assistance my mother had already provided. The revelation session concluded with my mother's acknowledgement that Richard's deception required immediate termination of their relationship and implementation of measures to prevent further contact or manipulation attempts. The decision was emotionally devastating but necessary to protect her from additional exploitation and begin the healing process. The family unity that emerged from addressing this crisis together demonstrated the strength of relationships based on honesty and mutual protection, compared to romantic attachments built on deception and manipulation. The intervention had achieved its objectives of exposing fraud and implementing protective measures while preserving family relationships through honest communication and supportive action. The upcoming wedding celebration would proceed as planned, but in an environment free from the stress and deception that had been affecting family relationships for months. The resolution of this crisis provided foundation for building stronger family bonds based on truth and mutual support, rather than vulnerability to external manipulation and exploitation. The professional expertise that had enabled discovery and documentation of Richard's deception demonstrated how business principles and ethical frameworks could address personal crises effectively when applied with strategic planning and family cooperation. Premier Recovery Solutions had provided not only financial security but also the investigative capabilities necessary to protect my family from sophisticated fraud. The week following our family confrontation about Richard's deception brought a period of emotional healing and practical planning that should have marked the final preparation phase for our wedding celebration. Carmen had terminated her relationship with Richard immediately upon learning the truth about his financial fraud, demonstrating remarkable courage and decisiveness, despite the emotional devastation of discovering that someone she loved had been systematically exploiting her trust and resources. Premier Recovery Solutions maintained exceptional operational performance during this transitional period, with all client relationships continuing to generate superior results that reinforced our market position as the premier ethical collection agency in the regional healthcare and professional services sectors. The Metro Health Systems contract had exceeded initial performance projections by 23% during the first quarter, establishing a foundation for long-term partnership expansion and additional service offerings. The business success provided both financial security and professional validation during a period when family relationships required significant emotional investment and careful attention to healing processes. The systematic approaches that had driven company growth were proving equally effective for managing personal crises and rebuilding family trust through honest communication and supportive action. Sarah Kim had assumed increased operational responsibilities during my focus on family matters, demonstrating the leadership development and organizational strength that would support continued growth and market expansion. Her management of client relationships and staff coordination had maintained service quality standards, while also implementing process improvements that enhanced efficiency and customer satisfaction metrics. Elena, the team has performed exceptionally well during this period of transition, and our client feedback continues to reflect the superior service quality that differentiates premier recovery solutions from traditional collection agencies. Sarah reported during our weekly operational review. The systematic training and ethical frameworks you have established create consistent excellence regardless of individual circumstances or external challenges. Her assessment confirmed that the business foundation we had built could support continued success while providing flexibility for addressing personal priorities and family obligations. The combination of strong operational systems and committed staff members created resilience that enabled sustained performance during challenging periods that might disrupt less systematically managed organizations. The wedding planning had resumed with renewed family unity and emotional clarity, now that Richard's manipulation had been eliminated from our relationships and decision-making processes. Carmen's recovery from the betrayal was progressing constructively, supported by family counseling and financial planning assistance that would help her rebuild confidence and develop stronger protective measures for future relationships. Michael had been exceptionally supportive throughout the family crisis, demonstrating the partnership qualities and emotional maturity that reinforced our decision to build a life together based on shared values and mutual respect. His understanding of business principles and ethical frameworks had provided valuable perspective during the intervention planning, while also offering emotional support for managing complex family dynamics. The final week before our wedding celebration represented a return to joy and anticipation, after months of stress and deception that had threatened to overshadow our important milestone. The resolution of the family crisis had created stronger bonds and deeper appreciation for relationships based on honesty and mutual support rather than manipulation and exploitation. However, the anticipated period of peaceful preparation was shattered by a discovery that represented the most devastating betrayal I would ever experience. The revelation occurred when I attempted to verify our wedding fund balance in preparation for final vendor payments that were due within 48 hours of our ceremony date. The savings account that contained our wedding funds showed a balance of $437, representing a reduction of over $31,000 from the amount that should have been available for our celebration expenses. The dramatic decrease could not be explained by authorized transactions or legitimate wedding expenditures that Michael and I had approved through our careful budget management process. The initial shock of discovering the missing funds was followed by immediate investigation of account activity that revealed a series of withdrawals and transfers that had occurred during the preceding 6 weeks without our knowledge or authorization. The transactions coincided exactly with the period when my mother had been requesting increasing amounts of financial assistance for Richard's supposed emergency situations. The account access records showed that the withdrawals had been conducted using my mother's secondary account holder authorization, which had been established to facilitate emergency access during wedding planning but had never been intended for substantial financial transactions without explicit approval from the primary account holders. The pattern of withdrawals revealed systematic depletion of our wedding funds that corresponded directly with my mother's financial assistance to Richard, indicating that she had been using our marriage celebration money to support his fraudulent claims about tax obligations and employment emergencies. The betrayal was comprehensive and devastating, representing not only theft of our financial resources but also violation of trust during the most important celebration of our lives. The documentation of unauthorized transactions provided clear evidence that my mother had deliberately accessed our wedding funds without permission, while simultaneously requesting additional loans and financial assistance under false pretenses. The deception involved multiple layers of manipulation that had exploited both my trust in family relationships and my desire to support someone I believed was experiencing legitimate difficulties. The timing of this discovery, just 5 days before our wedding date, created an immediate crisis that threatened to destroy our celebration, while also raising complex questions about legal action, family relationships, and appropriate responses to such unprecedented betrayal. The emotional impact was devastating, but the practical implications required immediate attention to prevent complete cancellation of wedding arrangements that had been planned for over a year. Michael's reaction to learning about the stolen wedding funds reflected both outrage at the betrayal and concern about the implications for our family relationships and future financial planning. His support during this crisis demonstrated the partnership's strength that would be essential for addressing the immediate practical challenges while also managing the emotional devastation of such comprehensive deception. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.